On that particular day when I was asleep, I sensed the bed shift behind me, warm breath against my neck, and just as I murmured, "You're home early," a hand descended lower, strong and unfamiliar, leading me to the realization that it was not my wife. This all began after my wife took on the responsibility of caring for her ill sister. The last sound I heard before the door clicked shut was the dragging of her suitcase wheels down the hallway. My wife did not even bid farewell, she merely shouted something regarding her sister's surgery and the key to the medicine cabinet. Then came the silence, the kind that lingers too long and weighs down a house like dust that never gets cleaned away. I remained in the kitchen for an extended period after her departure, my fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of coffee that I had no intention of consuming. She would be away for at least a week, perhaps longer, depending on her sister's condition. I should have felt a sense of relief. Instead, I felt exposed. It was as if all the noise she brought, the clattering words, the sighs, the vacant glances, had been keeping something at bay. Now, with the silence, something began to creep in. It had been years since I felt close to her. Years since our discussions extended beyond grocery lists or complaints about how I loaded the dishwasher. Our intimacy had become a memory we both evaded. Her eyes never lingered. Her hands never reached out. I ceased trying sometime after I recognized that her rejection had morphed into indifference. I had grown accustomed to the cold. Then Liam called. I had not heard his voice in months, and even then, it was through gritted teeth. Our last argument had been vicious, one of those disputes that leaves a bitter taste in your mouth long after the words have faded. I never fully comprehended what fractured our relationship. Perhaps it was my reaction when he came out. Perhaps it was my failure to react at all. But suddenly, he announced he was coming home. Just for a few days, he mentioned needing space from his roommate. I did not inquire further. I simply replied, "Okay." He arrived that evening, a duffel bag draped over his shoulder, taller than I recalled, with more defined angles in his jaw and a tranquility I did not recognize. His hair was longer as well, cascading over his eyes in a manner that imparted an older, darker kind of allure. Upon entering, his gaze met mine for merely a moment before surveying the room as if assessing how much had altered since he last stood there. Or perhaps how little had changed. We did not embrace. We never truly did. He placed his bag by the stairs and nodded. "Hey, I responded, uncertain of what else to say. He settled in as if he had never departed, yet our conversation was minimal. Dinner was subdued. He consumed his meal in silence, scrolling through his phone between bites. I inquired if he was still employed at that cafe near campus. He replied in the negative. I asked if he had secured a new position. He merely shrugged. I chose not to press further. That night, I remained awake longer than usual, fixated on the flickering TV screen while a late-night rerun hummed in the background. Liam had retired to bed hours prior. I convinced myself I was merely unwinding, but in truth, I was listening. Listening for sounds from upstairs, the creak of the hallway floorboards, the click of his door. Nothing occurred. Eventually, I compelled myself to rise and retire for the night. The bedroom felt chillier without her presence. I crawled beneath the covers and gazed at the ceiling, my body heavy, yet my mind alert. Sleep came slowly, drifting like a fog I could not fully penetrate. At some point in the middle of the night, I stirred. It was faint, akin to a whisper of movement. I could have sworn I sensed the mattress dip slightly, as if someone had brushed against the edge or leaned in close. My eyes fluttered open, but only darkness greeted me. I reached toward the other side of the bed, finding it empty. Naturally, it was. She was gone. Still, my heart raced a bit more than it ought to have. I tightened the blanket around me and turned away from the emptiness. The following morning, I dismissed the sensation. Probably just a dream. Or perhaps my body simply longed for the weight of someone beside me. I had spent far too many nights alone in that bed, even when she was present. Liam was already in the kitchen when I descended. He stood by the window, shirtless, sipping coffee as if he owned the space. The sunlight highlighted the sharp contours of his shoulders and the slight sheen of sweat on his neck. He didn't acknowledge me when I entered, merely mumbled, "There's more coffee if you wish." "Thanks," I replied, taking a mug and forcing my gaze away. There was something about his casual demeanor so untroubled that made my skin tighten. We spent the day moving around each other like phantoms. He remained mostly in his room or out on the porch with his headphones on. I occupied myself with trivial tasks, rearranging tools in the shed, watering plants that did not require watering. I kept convincing myself it was simply pleasant to have him home. That was all. However, that night, it occurred again. I was in bed, lights off, eyes shut. The house had settled into silence. I heard footsteps, soft and deliberate, somewhere down the hallway. Then silence. Then the faintest sound of my door gently opening. My body froze. Breath caught somewhere in my throat. I did not move. Did not even open my eyes. I sensed it again, the weight, the presence. The bed dipped slowly as if someone was carefully crawling in. The scent in the air was unfamiliar. Not hers, but warmer, masculine. I told myself it was merely another dream. Yet as the sheets shifted and something warm pressed against my back, I whispered without thinking, "You're home early." Silence. No voice responded, only breath. Shallow and steady. Then the softest brush of a hand against my side, so light I almost doubted it had occurred. I did not turn around. I did not move. Eventually, the warmth withdrew. The bed lightened. The door creaked shut. Once more. I lay there wide awake, pulse racing. It could not have been her. It was not her. And deep down, I understood who it had been, but I was not prepared to confront what that entailed. Not yet. Yet I knew something was unfolding. The following morning, I moved like a man navigating through smoke. I found it difficult to concentrate on anything for more than a few seconds. The coffee had an ashy taste, the kitchen was too quiet, and the chair felt too cold against my skin. I kept replaying the events of the night in my mind repeatedly. The slow creak of the door. The weight sinking into the mattress. The hand that was not hers. It was perplexing. Yet, it was entirely logical. I was not imagining things, I had not been dreaming. I was aware of it. Deep within that realm beneath logic, the realm where shame and truth coexisted. With folded arms, Liam descended the stairs. As if nothing had changed. He wore a loose white tank top, his hair disheveled. A phone in his hand. When our eyes met, he maintained the gaze just long enough to cause my stomach to tighten. "Did you sleep well?" he inquired, his tone casual. I nodded, perhaps too quickly. "Yes, fine. And you?" He smirked, almost as if he was challenging me to elaborate. I hadn't slept much. I felt the urge to confront him. I wanted to ask, "Did you enter my room last night?" But the words were lodged like thorns in my throat. If I was mistaken, what would that imply about me? And If I was correct, we had not spoken much after that. He poured himself some cereal. I remained silent. It felt as though we were performers in a play that had lost its script. Later that day, I attempted to call my wife, the Lone Ranger, 4 times before it went to voicemail. I did not leave a message. I merely stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, hoping it might provide me with answers. Her absence no longer felt like liberation. It felt like a ticking clock. By the time evening arrived, I still had not received a text back. Liam was outside on the deck again, lounging like a man with no obligations. I stepped outside with a drink in hand, merely to disrupt the silence, perhaps even to reclaim some of the space he was occupying. "Beautiful night," I remarked. He looked up at me slowly, then nodded. "It is." I leaned against the railing, my eyes fixed on the darkening sky. "So, are you considering returning to your place soon?" He gave a lazy shrug. "Not in a hurry." Silence. Again. The air between us became heavier with each passing second. Then he added almost as an afterthought, "It feels good to be back, though. Peaceful." I didn't respond. I couldn't. He turned his head then, fully this time, and looked at me. Not in the way a son gazes at his father. It was slower, more deliberate. His eyes lingered too long, scanning my face as if he were searching for something hidden. My heart pounded hard in my chest. "Are you okay?" he inquired, his voice suddenly softer. I nodded again, gripping my glass, feeling just tired. He smirked, a different expression from earlier. Not amused, almost knowing. That night, I ensured the bedroom door was locked. I checked it twice, but even with that flimsy line of defense, I couldn't find sleep. Every creak of the house made my eyes snap open. Every gust of wind against the window felt like a breath on my neck. At one point, I swore I heard the doorknob twitch. I stared at it for an hour, unmoving. Morning arrived without sleep. I looked like hell, and Liam noticed. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked while sipping from a glass of orange juice. "Fine," I replied, biting the word as if it offended me. He merely smiled and walked past, the edge of his fingers brushing my lower back as he passed. It was nothing. Really, just a light touch, an accident. But I felt it like lightning. Something had shifted, and we both recognized it. The day dragged on. I attempted to occupy myself with anything: yard work, cleaning out the garage, even organizing tools I hadn't used in years. But my mind was no longer my own. Every memory was layered with last night and the night before. The bed, the heat, the silence. That evening, he sat with me on the couch. Not beside me, but close to me. We watched something on Netflix. I couldn't tell you what. My brain wasn't registering anything except his proximity. Our knees brushed once, then again, and then his thigh rested lightly against mine, and he didn't move. Neither did I. I could feel his body heat through the fabric of his jeans. He shifted slightly, leaned back, arm behind my shoulder on the couch. fingers grazing the cushion just inches away from me. I should have relocated. I failed to do so. Do you ever reflect on the past? He inquired abruptly, his gaze still fixed on the screen. I turned to face him. What do you imply? Like how events might have unfolded? If individuals had acted differently? If we had expressed different sentiments? I gulped. I strive not to. He then looked at me. Completely, his eyes dark and impenetrable. Occasionally, I do. I found it hard to breathe. Then he rose, heading to the shower. The moment fractured. He vanished upstairs while I remained motionless. Later, I walked past his room on my way to mine. The door was ajar, the light dim. I peered in unintentionally. He stood there shirtless, a towel wrapped around his waist, damp hair cascading into his eyes as he gazed into the mirror. And then he met my gaze through the reflection. Not taken aback, not ashamed, he simply stared and smiled. Then extinguished the light. That night, I checked the lock on my door repeatedly. Yet I lay there for hours. Wide awake, listening, waiting, fearing what I had already etched. Because whatever game we were engaged in, it was no longer confined to my mind, but there was still much more to unfold. I cannot pinpoint when the waiting became a habit. Perhaps it was the third night or the fourth. But by that time, I was no longer securing the door solely out of fear, at least not entirely. I was locking it because it afforded me time to contemplate, to prepare, to steel myself for what I had no clue how to prevent. The boundary between dread and anticipation had merged into something far more perilous: curiosity. My wife's calls had become colder, shorter. When I responded, her voice sounded as if it were emanating from another world. She discussed her sister's surgery and updates on Kurt and concluded each conversation with a distracted, I love you, more out of routine than genuine feeling. I ceased reciprocating. She didn't appear to notice. In the meantime, Liam's presence in the house was growing heavier, not louder. He didn't converse much, but heavier. He occupied every room he entered without uttering a word. I would pass him in the hallway and sense the air shift. His fragrance lingered longer than it ought to have. Earthy, fresh, masculine. It would adhere to doorknobs, the edge of the couch cushion, even the bathroom towels we now somehow shared without ever discussing it. I told myself I was imagining it, that these were the illusions of a solitary mind. However, it was difficult to maintain that belief. When he stood behind me at the bathroom sink, shirtless, close enough for the warmth of his skin to reach me, I was shaving, feigning ignorance, pretending not to glance at him through the mirror when he leaned in to rinse. His mouth and his shoulder brushed against mine. The moments kept accumulating like hazardous little accidents. He would look at me during breakfast, eyes lowered. Slow, scrutinizing, the kind of gaze that made my chest constrict and my pulse stutter. He began offering to cook, lingering in the kitchen longer than necessary, drying his hands on the same towel I used, touching items that didn't require touching. Then came the
Question. It was late evening. We had just finished dinner, an unspoken
agreement that had evolved into a peculiar
kind of routine. He cooked. I poured the wine. Neither of us spoke much, but the silence between us had begun to feel intentional.
He reclined in his chair, swirling his wine, and observed me with a calm
expression that made me feel uneasy. Do you think you ever truly loved her? He inquired. I blinked. Your mother? He nodded once. Yeah. I paused, my eyes drifting toward the window. I used to, but not anymore. I don't know. The words escaped, too candid.
He did not respond, merely tilted his
head and remarked, You don't look at her the way you once did. You don't even look at her the way you used to look at me. That halted me in my tracks. I met his gaze across the table. What does that mean? He
shrugged, but there was something sharp beneath
the surface. Nothing, just an observation. He rose and began clearing the
plates as if he hadn't just exposed something neither of us were prepared to
acknowledge. I remained seated, unable to move, my heart pounding in my chest. That night, I lay in bed, scrolling through my phone. In the darkness, my wife had sent a brief message. The surgery went well. She would be staying another week to assist.
There was no warmth, no
emotion, merely a logistical update. I
turned off the screen and gazed at the
ceiling.
My body felt fatigued, yet my mind
refused to rest. I cannot recall when I fell asleep. All I remember is the moment I awoke.
The door creaked open so softly that I was uncertain if I had actually heard it.
The darkness seemed to deepen. Then I sensed it. The weight on the mattress was slow and deliberate. The sheets shifted. The warmth of another body settling in behind me. I did not move. My breath slowed to a shallow whisper. A hand brushed against my side. Gentle, intimate. I reassured myself it was her. I needed it to be her. You're
home early, I murmured into the dark, a voice tinged with sleep and nerves.
No response.
The breath behind me felt different.
Steadier, younger. Then the touch came. Again, gliding over my stomach. Fingertips trailing lower. My body reacted involuntarily. My hips shifted, breath catching in my throat. Lips grazed the back of my neck. Warm, soft, hesitant. And then I realized this was not my wife. Yet. I did not stop. I should have. Every rational thought screamed for me to
turn, to say something, to end whatever
this was. But I could not. I did not want to. I was too far gone. The hand pressed against my chest, sliding upward, pausing at the hollow of my throat. My heart raced beneath it. Then a voice, barely a whisper, trembling with something unspoken. I did not want to wake you. I froze. I recognized that voice. Liam. I turned over.
Sharply, my eyes adjusting to the faint light filtering through the blinds.
He was right there, shirtless, breathing heavily. Eyes wide as if he had been holding this in. For far too long. What are you doing? My voice cracked under the weight of shock and something dangerously close to desire. You did not stop me, he said. Quiet yet unflinching. I sat up, my muscles tight. You should not be here. This is wrong. He remained still. However, it is not a no. I found myself unable to speak. My chest felt as if it were collapsing inward. His fingers reached for mine gently, with caution, yet I withdrew before they could make contact. He did not appear hurt, merely patient. I am not attempting to confuse you, he stated. But I have been confused for far too long. Then, without uttering another word, he rose and walked towards the door. He hesitated with his hand on the handle. I will not return. Unless you wish for me to. And just like that, he vanished. I remained there in the darkness, the silence closing in around me. Like water, too dense to breathe. I did not sleep for the remainder of the night, not because I feared he might come back, but because I was petrified he would not. Because I understood that once this began, we could not reverse it. The following day drifted by in a fog. I navigated through it like a man submerged underwater, hearing sounds, yet
not fully engaged, completing tasks as
if by instinct. I trimmed the
hedges, took out the bins, cleaned the
stove top, even though it was immaculate. Yet nothing I did could erase the impression of the previous night. The warmth that still clung to my skin, or the echo of his voice murmuring, "You did not stop me." Liam did not mention it. Not directly. He did not need to. That morning, he appeared in the kitchen. Barefoot, his hair still damp from a shower. Wearing only a pair of low-slung joggers. And a gray t-shirt that fit a little too snugly across his chest. He inquired if I required anything from the store, if I wanted the last of the eggs, if I had seen the news regarding the blackout in the north. All ordinary questions, all posed with a semblance of false nonchalance, as if we had not shared something unspoken in the dark just hours earlier. I played along, said little, nodded, feigned ignorance to the way his eyes lingered on me a moment too long, or the manner in which he always seemed to find an excuse to brush past me, his body grazing mine in the narrow confines of the house. Yet beneath it all, everything buzzed. I felt observed. I felt desired. I felt wrong. My wife did not call that day, she merely sent a brief message. Julie's infection is worsening. She may remain for a few more days. I love you. I did not respond. I was unable to. The reality was that I had not genuinely thought about her for several days. She had transformed into an absence, a diminishing silhouette in a photograph I no longer gazed upon. That evening, as I sat on the couch, nursing a drink and feigning interest in the television, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. I did not need to turn around to identify who it was. Liam's presence was unmistakable now, evident in the cadence of his steps and the stillness in the atmosphere when he entered a room. He paused at the threshold. I kept my gaze fixed on the screen, hardly breathing. After a prolonged silence, he circled the couch and settled at the far end, neither too close nor too far. The gentle flicker of the TV enveloped us in a soft glow. Yet, neither of us uttered a word. "You locked the door last night," he finally said, his voice low but firm. I nodded slowly. "Yes." He hesitated before inquiring, "Are you going to lock it again tonight?" I did not reply immediately. My hand tightened around the glass in my palm. I don't know. Liam remained silent. He rose slowly, turning to face me with something inscrutable in his eyes. If you don't, I will understand what that signifies. He did not wait for my response. He turned and ascended the stairs, his footsteps gradually fading until only the soft hum of the television and the frantic beat of my heart remained. I remained on the couch until well past midnight. I do not recall turning off the TV. I remember ascending the stairs with slow, cautious steps, the hallway feeling colder than usual. I stood before my bedroom door for several minutes, my hand on the doorknob, uncertain, and then quietly, purposefully, I entered, closed the door behind me, and left it unlocked. I crawled into bed and lay there in the darkness, my breath shallow, nerves tingling. I stared at the ceiling, my eyes adjusting to the shadows. You would never allow me to get close again. My fingers intertwined in his hair, and I felt his breath falter against my neck. I ought to stop this, I whispered. But you won't, he replied. And he was correct. We began slowly, each touch cautious, as if we feared it would shatter the moment. However, as he leaned in and our lips met, something within me surrendered. His kiss was gentle yet assured, not tentative, not coincidental, as if he had rehearsed the scene countless times in his mind and knew precisely where it would lead. My hands glided along his back as he drew nearer, our legs entwined. His skin was warm, smooth, and quivering. His lips traveled from mine to my throat, then to my collarbone, leaving a trail of heat in their wake. I remained silent. I was unable to speak. I simply allowed it to happen. I let it unfold like a forbidden truth I could no longer ignore. He positioned himself over me, our bodies pressed together, breaths irregular. The heat between us surged like a wave, and I surrendered entirely. I felt him, every part of him, and I embraced it. In that bed, in that darkness, we crossed a boundary we could never reverse. When it concluded, he nestled into me, his head resting on my chest, his arm draped across my stomach as if he belonged there. I lay still, gazing at the ceiling once more. Yet this time, nothing felt the same. Because something within me had transformed. Not guilt, no shame, merely the burden of something irreversible. But that was merely the beginning. Much more was yet to unfold. Morning light poured across the sheets, gentle and uninvited. I was already awake, staring vacantly at the ceiling, the events of the night clinging to me like damp skin. Liam remained beside me, his breathing slow and steady. His arm lay across my stomach as if this was something we had experienced before, something familiar, comfortable, natural, yet nothing about it felt natural. I turned my head slightly to observe him. He appeared younger in slumber, softer. The usual guarded expression had vanished, replaced by something raw and human. And yet the weight of our actions settled more heavily into my chest with each passing second. I carefully slid out of bed, trying not to disturb him. As my feet made contact with the cold floorboards, a shiver coursed through me. Not from the chill, but from the awareness of what I had become, what we had become. I walked to the bathroom and gazed at my reflection for an extended period. My eyes appeared weary, haunted. My lips still bore the slight swelling from his kisses. I splashed cold water on my face, hoping it would wash something away, but it did not. If anything, it only clarified the reality. There was no turning back. By the time I returned to the bedroom, the bed was vacant, sheets rumpled, his scent lingering in the air. I hesitated, my heart pounding, but then heard movement downstairs. He was in the kitchen preparing coffee as if it were any other day, as if we hadn't just shattered the foundation of our lives mere hours ago. "Morning," he said without glancing up. "Morning," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He handed me a mug, his fingers brushing against mine. I flinched slightly. But he noticed. He made no comment, just
leaned against the counter, sipping
slowly. "You okay?" he inquired after a moment. I offered a non-committal nod. "I don't know what I am." He exhaled, placing the mug down. "Me neither." Silence blossomed between us once more. Not heavy like before, not tense, just confused, tender, dangerous. I turned away, unable to meet his gaze. This cannot happen again. He did not argue. He did not apologize. He simply stated, but it already did. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. "You are my son." Liam remained silent for a moment. Then softly, he asked, "Am I? Really?" My breath caught. "We haven't communicated like a father and son in years." He continued. "You pushed me away long before I left. You didn't make an effort when I came out. You didn't even call me on my birthday last year." I swallowed hard, shame creeping up my throat. I was scared, I admitted, barely able to articulate the words. I didn't know how to cope with it. He nodded slowly. "I know, but I needed you then. And I think I believe you may have needed me as well."
His tone was not accusatory, it was simply a statement of fact. We remained there in silence, which felt like an eternity.
The mug I held became cold.
Outside, the sky darkened with clouds.
In the distance, I could hear a neighbor's dog barking.
These were trivial occurrences that seemed out of place in this moment, in this unholy bond we had formed in the darkness. Eventually, Liam passed by me on his way to the stairs. "I'm going to shower," he stated.
"Then I'll give you some space."
I turned to observe him but remained silent.
I did not stop him. When I heard the water running upstairs, I finally exhaled a breath I had been holding since dawn.
I leaned against the table with both hands, my chest heavy, uncertain if I was experiencing grief, regret, or loss. He departed within the hour.
No luggage, no farewell. He simply walked out the door like a storm retreating into the ocean. I did not follow him. The house became eerily quiet afterward.
The hours dragged on, and afternoon faded into evening. I sat by the window for an extended period, staring at the sidewalk, the mailbox, and the sky as it transitioned from pale gray to gold and then to nothingness.
My wife called around 8 p.m. I allowed it to ring until it went to voicemail. What could I possibly say? That I had betrayed her in a manner that no one could ever comprehend? That I had allowed someone into my bed? Someone whose name was etched into our family tree? I could not. I did not sleep that night, I did not even attempt to. I remained in the dark with the lamp off and the curtains drawn back, watching the stars flicker in and out behind slowly moving clouds. Around midnight, my phone vibrated. There was one message from Liam: "If you want the truth, I'll be waiting." Just a single line. No inquiries, no pressure. Yet, I felt it like a spark igniting within my chest. The following morning, I got into the car. I did not pack anything. I did not leave a note. I simply drove toward the truth I had been reluctant to face, toward the person I had never truly known, toward a future I was uncertain I was prepared for, but could no longer ignore. I had no idea where he was staying, he had not informed me. However, I recalled the old apartment complex situated near the train station, the one he used to share with that friend he rarely mentioned. The one featuring rusted balconies and peeling green paint that seemed to belong to a different era. Somehow, I instinctively knew he had returned there. The parking lot appeared mostly vacant. I remained in my car for 10, perhaps 15 minutes, observing the windows. Second floor, corner unit. The curtains were
partially drawn, allowing a glimpse of a soft yellow light within.
I did not see
him, but it was unnecessary.
I ascended the
stairs slowly, my hands tucked in my jacket
pockets.
Despite the morning already being warm, each step felt increasingly burdensome. At the door, I paused. My knuckles hovering, I knocked once, then
again. After a brief moment, it opened. He
looked as though he hadn't slept either. His hair was disheveled. His shirt clung to his
body as if he had just thrown it on. Yet his eyes were calm, not surprised. As if he had anticipated my arrival, as if he had been waiting all along.
"Hey," he said, his voice
soft, as if the hallway did not warrant a louder sound. I stepped inside. The apartment had a faint scent of coffee and clean laundry. It was sparsely furnished, featuring only a small couch,
a coffee table, and a few books stacked on the floor, familiar and unchanged.
We stood there for a moment, silent. Then I posed the question, the one I had not dared to ask until this moment. Why did you come into my bed that night? He settled on the edge of the couch, elbows resting on his knees, because I did not
know how else to draw close to you.
His candor took the breath from my lungs. I sat opposite him, attempting to find solid ground amidst the chaos that had led us here. You did not consider what it would do to me? I inquired. He looked up. I did, but I also contemplated what it might resolve.
That response was perplexing.
Yet, at a deeper level, I comprehended it. We had both been fractured long before that night. Years of silence, distance, bottled resentment, and unresolved feelings. And, in a twisted manner, we both reached for something that night. Not merely physical, but human. It was something we were unsure how else to articulate. I no longer know who I am, I remarked after a lengthy silence. Liam reclined, his head leaning against the wall. I am equally uncertain. The silence between us extended once more, yet this time it lacked any sting. It simply existed, like a third entity in the room, positioned between us, allowing us the space to experience what we could not express. I do not
regret our actions, he eventually stated.
However, I lament that this is the only way we ever truly connected. My chest constricted. I have let you down as a father. He shook his head. You have let me down as a man, and I have let you down in return. There was no anger in his tone, no resentment, merely the truth. I was at a loss for how to respond to that. I rose, walked to the window, gazing down at the street where children
were riding bicycles, and a woman was pushing a
stroller with a drooping wheel. What comes next? I inquired. I do not know, he replied.
I turned to confront him.
Do you desire this? Whatever this may be.
He raised his gaze
toward me. I seek honesty. I yearn for a connection. I want you in my life. The rest we can navigate.
I moved deliberately, taking a seat
beside him this time. Close yet not making contact.
My hands rested on my knees,
trembling slightly. I am uncertain if I can love you in the manner you desire. He did not flinch. Then, love me in the way you are able.
That silence returned, but this time it felt almost warm, healing, even.
A space where no judgment resided, only the ache of two individuals striving to discover each other
amidst the remnants of what they were meant
to be. He extended his hand and placed it over mine. I did not withdraw. I require no labels, he murmured. I
merely need to know I was not irrational for
feeling what I felt. I glanced down at our intertwined hands. You were not. We did not kiss.
We did not touch beyond that.
We
simply remained there, two men in the stillness,
holding on to something delicate and unnamed. Perhaps it was closure. Perhaps it was the commencement of something neither of us could comprehend. Perhaps it was both. As the sun ascended higher, illuminating the floor in gold, I allowed my head to rest against his shoulder.
I confessed that I was frightened. He responded, so am I, but we are no longer alone. That, in some way, was sufficient for the moment. After returning home, I found myself repeatedly reflecting on that evening, which began in silence and concluded with an irreversible act.
I ought to have intervened. I should have refused. Yet, I did not.
Now, I struggle to view myself in the same light. I am uncertain whether it was love, a moment of weakness, or something more sinister that eludes description. All I am aware of is that we transgressed a boundary we were never intended to breach.
I cannot cease pondering, what are we at this point? Please tell me, was it an error or something deeper? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. I need reassurance that I am not alone. And keep in mind, this is not the conclusion just yet.